January 29, 1901 was George Henry White's last day as a member of Congress. It was also the last day that an African American would serve in Congress for the next 3 decades. In his farewell address, he said, "This is perhaps the Negro's temporary farewell to the American Congress. But let me say, Phoenix-like, he will rise up someday and come again." He understood that this was the beginning of a long battle for African Americans to regain a voice in the United States government. And he was right. His home state of North Carolina did not elect another black representative for 9 decades. Here in Florida, it was 120 years. When most of us learned about black history in school, the conversation centered around the civil rights movement. We learned about the inequities that existed in society before. We learned about the epic battles that took place in the 1950s and 60s, and we learned about the amazing people who helped shape the world that we live in today. But oftentimes what we didn't learn about was we didn't learn about individuals like these gentlemen. Amazing American patriots who literally risked their lives to serve their country. Before the 20th century, there were 20 black men who served in Congress and 2 in the United States Senate. Before, voter suppression took in and started to reduce our ability to get people elected to office and our ability to have a voice in government. And then once we lost that voice in government, other rights started to go away as well. And our people faced decades of oppression. Now here we are. It has been 55 years since the Voting Rights Act was passed. And again, our community has made amazing strides. Now we've had 119 people serve in the Congress. We had 6 elected senators, 2 elected governors, and a president. But voter suppression never really stopped. It was just kept under control all this time, until recently. This is a screenshot from the Department of Justice website. This lists 36 cases since 1998 brought by the Justice Department under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. Section 2 specifically prohibits policies and procedure that discriminate on the basis of race. So when you think about it, there were 36 cases in 20 years between 1998 and 2017. The most recent one listed is from January of 2017, before the new administration's Justice Department took over. So it's almost as if racism magically ended in January of 2017. Another problem that has recently developed for our voting rights is that the Supreme Court overturned Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act in 2013. Before, states and municipal governments that had a history of discrimination could not change the policies and procedures around voting without going to the Justice Department and having those changes approved. Section 5 was critical to keeping voter suppression under control. Now, state and local governments can pass new laws that violate the Constitution, and those laws can remain in effect for a period of time while those cases are working their way through the courts, something that could take years. For example, we've all heard of the grandfather clause, but a lot of times what we don't learn is that at the time that those laws were being passed, there was no doubt that those laws were unconstitutional. But those laws went into effect and suppressed the black vote for decades across the South until the Supreme Court finally overturned it in 1915. So there's really no doubt that today our voting rights are in danger in a way that they haven't been for more than half a century. But there's good news as well. And the good news is that due to the progress we've made over the last half century, we have more great leaders on the ground ready to fight back at the local level than we've ever had before. And because we have those people in place, we're ready to transition and to start that focus on the local level. We know that we can't count on our government in Washington. And if you live here in Florida, you know we can't count on our government in Tallahassee to protect our voting rights. So it's time for us to build the infrastructure and organize people at the local level to make that happen. So we need to understand how voter suppression really works. There's two different ways that voter suppression tends to happen. The first is administrative obstacles, and the second being intimidation. African Americans are more likely to show up to their polling place on election day and find out that they're not registered to vote. And the reason that they're not registered to vote is because there was an unnecessary purge of the voting rolls that was designed specifically to target minorities. If you live here in Florida, here in Broward County and Palm Beach County, we should have an elected supervisor of elections chosen by the community that they are there to serve. But for the upcoming election cycle in 2020, we will not have that. So we need to be ready for new policies and procedures to come in that were not designed to serve these communities. We are likely to see puzzling decisions being made about the allocation of resources that will lead to logistical issues. And those logistical issues will lead to long lines on election day. And when we see those long lines, they will be occupied by people of color. In addition to the administrative hurdles, we also have to worry about disenfranchisement by the criminal justice system. Due to over-policing of Black communities and disparities in how our cases are handled, African Americans are far more likely to lose their right to vote, sometimes for decades and sometimes for relatively minor crimes. It's actually fairly unusual in democracies for citizens to lose their right to vote because they committed a minor crime. In fact, here in the United States, this did not begin until after Black men gained the right to vote. This is Crystal Mason. She's a Texas woman, a mother of 3, and she was recently sent to prison for 5 years for casting a vote in the 2016 election because she had a previous conviction. In Tennessee, activists worked very hard last year for the 2018 election cycle to help get more participation from their community. They got 86,000 people registered to vote and really made an impact in the midterm elections. As soon as the Tennessee legislature came back into session this year, they passed a new law that could send activists to prison for up to a year if mistakes are made during voter registration drives. It's intimidation. They're using our criminal justice system as a political weapon in 2019. So clearly, the battle is not over. If we wish to reach that level of equity that we have been fighting for all these years, we need to build a ramp at the local level that will allow us to overcome any new obstacle that our enemy can devise. We need to build this ramp so that it can get enough of us over that we can knock those obstacles down. Now is the time for us to talk to our friends and our neighbors and make sure that they are registered to vote, make sure they're still registered to vote if they've done it in the past, and make sure that they understand how critical this moment is. Now is the time for us to make sure that everybody gets to the polls and votes. We've seen that our rights can be rolled back. We understand the incredible effort that past generations put into getting those rights back, and we can't let our progress roll back again. We are the generation that will march the last mile to equality.